Alright, so you might hear noise throughout the video. That's a fidget spinner that someone gave to me, and it's actually a pretty crappy one. It only has two blades, and it was made in China, so it spins for about maybe 30 seconds. Maybe not even. It's really bad, but just put fidget spinner in the title so it gets a lot more views. But this might be the last episode. I might go more in depth on different topics, or I might just talk about the 7 I have, which is the tech tree. Actually, no, I've only talked about 6 because this will be the 6th one. Or no, actually, I've talked about 7. I've talked about choosing a civilization, game settings, and I think I might change that name. I'll probably do a different one on early game. That might be for location because that's pretty much all I've talked about. I talked about my second and third city locations, not so much actual early game strategy. So that'll be probably game settings and settling your cities, and yeah. And then I have the 4 on victory. No, I have the technology tree, and then the 4 on victory. Well, actually, technically, the technology is merged with science, and I talked about science victory there. So now is military victory. Obviously, this was a game I went for military victory in, so it's only natural that I would use this. So now, for starters, you need to control every capital in the game, regardless of whether it's a duel or a huge map. So this map size, I think it was standard. Yeah, there were 8 capitals. I control mine. I control the Shoshones. I control the Siamese, the Persians, the French, the Assyrian, the Arabian, and the Indian capital. So that's 8 capitals in this game. And this is actually standard size is actually not in between in terms of map size. Small and standard. There's 6 map sizes, so small and standard are the middle. So technically, standard size is actually on the larger end of maps. So large and huge, they'll be bigger than this, but it doesn't get much larger in terms of map size. Maybe if you do like continents or large islands, it can get larger, but not much. So like what I did in this game, like you can do a standard military victory if it's on like duel or tiny, maybe even small, where you have like units. You have proper artillery, you have proper infantry, you have proper cavalry, not even cavalry, it would probably be like proper tank units. And you might even have proper anti-tank units, so like helicopter, gunships. But the way if it's like a larger, huge map, what you can do is you can just, like in this game, what I did was I built a bunch of XCOMs. I got this, like for example, I think I got Siege, and then I just dropped them right on the capitals of everyone. And that's a really effective strategy if they have like A, just no units, or B, if they have like no buildings. Because even if they have units, an XCOM squad is actually really powerful. 100 strength. That's the second most powerful unit in the game, only short to giant death robots. And giant death robots don't even get terrain bonuses, while these do. So yeah, and then that's a lot of strength to haste with. I'm not even sure they get what's it called? I think giant death robots might get penalties against cities, but I'm not entirely sure on that. So you drop them around their capital, take it, and then like that's more effective on like small maps, because if you're on an 8-player map, you can't really maintain all the capitals from every single player. And if you only take their capitals, they're still, like for example Persia, he still has a 22, 23, 19, 21. The 10 and 6 won't do much, but these can still produce units, and they could take back the capital, especially since the capital is crippled. Since you take it, you have to pop, and you destroy a ton of buildings. Like, how many buildings does this have? It only has 6. That's not a lot. It actually kept a lot of the Great Work buildings, which is kind of nice. But, yeah, 16, that's 6, I meant 16 would be a lot. 6, that's not a lot of buildings to keep, so most likely the defensive buildings will be destroyed. Maybe if you're lucky, walls will be kept. Like if I look at this city, there's nothing protecting it. It still has 122 defense, but no defensive buildings at all. Like my cap has 200. That might be the only 200 city in the entire game. Because I think I took out everyone's capitals, so no one else should have a 200 city. Yeah, I don't see one. So yeah. Generally want siege. Or what you can do is if you get Alhambra, which gives you a free drill 1 promotion for all melee units, and if you get the Brandenburg Gate or the Total War Policy and Autocracy, you can get Blitz, which that's pretty nice, but siege is better. Because this is most likely like, if you're doing this strategy, it's most likely through attrition and not necessarily, not necessarily the strength of your troops, but the amount. Because if you're going out based off strength, you would have tons of support. You would have artillery, you would have planes, you would have tanks, you would have anti-tanks, you would have anti-air, if you're going based off the quality of your army. But if you're going just off pure production and attrition, then this might be the way to go. So I think I'm definitely one manufactured goods. If I look at yeah, I have 628 hammers being produced, but a lot of that's coming from the RC. So if I look at economic, Carthage UT capital RGs. Let's see, how many of these are my original? And I'm literally all the capitals are in last. Alright, so 114, 100, 100, 103. That's 3 of my original cities that are over 100 production, and that's pretty good if you get over 100. Gades is 40, but that's the island city. Timok is 84. Molzenkai is 72. Agadaika is 52. These 3 are kind of good since I took them from a different civ, so it's okay if they're a little lower. And then the puppeted cities obviously aren't getting a lot. But yeah, so if you have a ton of production, this might work, but if you don't, you might rather go for a standard army. And with I kind of talked a little bit about this earlier, but there's different types of units. You have infantry units with, if you look at the tech tree, the most advanced one is all the way at the end. Mechanized infantry, which is 90 and 3. I actually never knew it had 3, but, and it's Armand Armor's 90 or 100. Oh no, they're 100. So they're same strength as XCOMs. They just they get the penalties of being a armor unit. And armor units are evolved from cavalry units. So it goes from cavalry, which is military science, to landships, which are combustion. So, and then you have, that's just standard infantry. You have artillery, which is which ends at rocket artillery, which is actually earlier. You get that earlier than mechanized infantry. Or it's actually technically a siege unit, but in the end game, you're only really, I think I mentioned this before, but it's only really worth getting them once you get artillery. I mean, cannons, they are more powerful than crossbows, and they do a lot more damage to cities, but they require the setup time, and they are only 2 ranged without indirect fire. It's more so worth just, if you're at chemistry, you might as well just go for dynamite. Because dynamite is closer to chemistry than rocketry is closer to dynamite, so the unit has a longer lifespan. But, and then XCOM squads, they're actually from evolved from paratroopers, which I don't know why I'm saying evolved, but they're kind of their own class. Like, they're not really an infantry unit, they're not really an armor unit, they're more so just their uniqueness is able to drop. The paratrooper drops within 9 tiles, while XCOM drops within 50. So it doesn't say that, but I just remember that. And so technically, if you're on a huge map, you won't be able to drop across the entire thing, but my XCOM squads could drop from here all the way to Assur with not much problem, really. So they have a really long range, basically the entire map. Now you have anti-air and anti-armor units. The anti-armor unit is helicopter gunships, which they're really bad units. I recommend you don't build any, but they don't attack cities, or at least I don't think they can attack cities. What their uniqueness is, they can hover over mountains or fly over, kind of like my unique ability, where once I get the first general, my units can move over mountains, but this just applies for all. And if they end their turn on a mountain, they take 50 damage, obviously. Similar to mine. Next unit would be actually, helicopter gunships, they come from anti-tank. So that's not that far off. Like, computers and combined arms aren't really that far off from each other. They're literally only, well actually, if you haven't gone up the tree, then it could be a waste, but generally it's only like combined arms, then 2 more Textile computers. Or maybe even 1 if you just go for rocketry and satellites. And then anti-tanks, they don't really evolve from anything significant. The closest thing would be, God, I don't even know. I think the closest thing would be Lancers, but those are anti-mounted units, not anti-armor units. So mounted units end at the industrial era. Modern era, you get armored units and then anti-armored units. Since we're finished anti-armor, anti-air, and sort of anti-mounted, but more specifically, Lancers are anti-mounted. Pikemen are the closest one, the next closest one. Those are anti-mounted units. And mounted units would be like Knights, Cavalry, Horsemen. That's actually the only 3. And the anti-mounted units would be Lancers, Pikemen, and Spearmen. But for the armored, it would be modern armor, tanks, land ships versus... There's actually only 2 anti-armor units, which are anti-tank and then helicopter gunships. So, I mean, helicopter gunships are actually worse than modern armor. I think modern armor are about even with all the modifiers, because helicopter gunships are only 60 strength, which isn't a lot compared to 100. But I suppose if you upgrade it with tons of unique promotions, then it would be worth it. But for the anti-air would be the anti-aircraft gun and then the mobile SAM, which is I'm not sure whether this is true, but I've heard that if you station one in your city, it can intercept atomic bombs, but that might only be for Civ 6. Or it might be just adjacent tiles. But basically, if you station these near your units, the aircraft bombing will take extra damage. They'll most likely be destroyed. I mean, your units will still take damage, just less, and they will take more, so. And then, we should probably move to air units next. You start with Great War bombers and fighters or triplanes at a modern era. They need oil, all of them do. And the fighters, they're generally used for intercepting bombers or performing sweeps to see whether units are safe from mobile SAMs or anti-air. And then bombers are used to dish out the damage. And then these upgrade into proper bombers and fighters, and then eventually into jet fighters and stealth bombers. Stealth bombers are really good. They go from about 10, or it might be 12 range. It doesn't say. Oh no, it does say 10 range to 20, which is, that's more from, I think it goes 6 to 10. Let's see, 6 to 10. Yeah, it's 6 to 10. And then 20 is actually, it's almost similar to XCOM's, just on a different level. You can't bomb from across the map, but you can station them in like your core cities. Like if I station them in Taymok, I would be able to easily target anyone who's like moving in on my outer cities. Maybe not like Persepolis and Sukhothai, but like my standard 6, or it was my standard 7, but those 6 I'd be able to protect easily. And then yeah, jet fighters, they still only have 10. Actually, that's an upgrade for mate, but that range is mainly only used for you can get +2 range, and it will increase the amount of it will increase the range of your interceptions, but the 10 is mainly for interceptions. So like they can intercept within 10 tiles of a city, which is actually quite a lot, because that sometimes overlaps other cities. So like if I stored it here, they probably won't be able to get Carthage, Utique, Mozonkani, Agadic on Hippo Regius. they would be able to get my other city, but all my RCs will be vulnerable. But my core ones would be safe, which is what's important. Now that we're done with air, I think we talked about the infantry units. That's actually the last one for terms of land units. There's actually Marines are a unique one. They're kind of in their own category. They're just good for crossing oceans and embarking. It's literally, I think, it has less strength than an infantry, but it has better promotions. Like I think it's kind of like the unique ability for Askia, how his units start with I think it's River Warrior or something. Basically, it removes the penalty for crossing rivers. I haven't really used these at all, so I don't know what they do, but I'm just gonna go with what it says, and hopefully I can actually build one. Let's see. I can just look right now. I don't even see Marine. Let's see. Empire modifier. Oh no, that's just I could buy one and just look. Where is it? Oh, I have a unit in the city. Oh no, I still have an anti-tank gun. Let's see. Marine. I could just look. Let's see. So cover 2. It starts with morale. These are all my modifiers from my wonders. Embarkation with defense. Alright, so yeah, it's actually double strength. But I think that's just full strength, because I think embarked units, they lose a ton of strength. It's like half or something. I don't know. I actually cannot see. Oh yeah, amphibious, where they eliminates the penalty, and then I think it's embarkation with defense. So it removes all the penalties for like water-related attacking. But that's kind of its own thing. I mean, I've kind of talked about what to do with a land victory, but obviously, like, I've played, I think, 2 or 3 archipelagos, and on those you need a navy. You can't do like an XCOM drop or just a standard invasion with like support units. I mean, you could, but you kind of need escort like naval units to do that. But generally, since most of the cities are coastal, you would just use your navy and that's it. You wouldn't use them as an escort. You'd use them as your prime means of attack. But throughout the eras, there are various naval units, and generally they're along the top of the tree, but that's mainly for the early ones. I can probably talk about all of them individually. Oh, I forgot to mention ranged units. These are actually some of the best. Like I've talked about, the most common counter for XCOMs are bazookas, because they have basically almost the strength of an XCOM, but they're ranged, so obviously they're going to win out. Rocket artillery are really vulnerable. How much strength? They have 45. That's not a lot. They can get probably 2 shot by 1 shot if they have good promotions. No, that's generally artillery. I don't think they can get 1 shot. Rocket artillery can by XCOMs, but it would definitely be a 2 shot. With bazookas, it would be an even fight basically, and you just spam those, and that's how you counter. But I could probably you start with archers, and then so archers, composites, and crossbows, they're all have 2 range. But once you get Gatling guns, they only have 1, and it's like that for machine guns and bazookas. You can get +1 range, and it would be 2. But +1 range on all other units would be 3, so, or at least all the other ranged units. But yeah, that's kind of a disadvantage, but they still have a lot more strength, like, mainly with their actual strength. So like a crossbowman has 13 strength but 18 range strength. Well, a Gatling gun is 30 for both, so that's an improvement. It's a little bit of an improvement in range strength, but a lot for actual strength. Makes them more defensive, and that's why they're only 1 range, I guess, kind of to balance it out, sort of. But now to navy. You have, well, my trireme got replaced with the Quincureme, but a trireme is a melee attacking ship, and you have 2 kinds of ships: melee attacking and ranged attack. There's no huge variety of ships like there is for land units. It's only those 2 types. And then the first ranged is a Galeas. Triremes are pretty bad. You can't really take out anyone with that, but Galeas you can. Because they actually have more strength than Triremes do. Even Kinkaremes, they have more strength than those. So it's worth, definitely, if you have a neighbor that you want to take out early game, get. And it's Archipelago, you would get these first. You can't even, I suppose you can use Triremes to escort tons of units, but it's better just to have a navy. I mean, you can do a dual attack land and sea, but it's still worth just putting all your effort in a navy rather than splitting it with land and navy. Now, the next ship is Caravels with astronomy. They're actually the upgrades of Triremes. They have 20 strength, so that's more than this. The turtle ship is a lot more strength. I think I've talked about it. I probably have, so. But it's just a 36 strength. They can't enter oceans, and that's only for Korea. But yeah, Caravels are actually the first that can enter oceans, and they actually have a bonus sight and move. Actually, no, I think they have the same move as Triremes. Yeah, they each have 4. Galeas have 3 only. But Caravels, they do get bonus sight. I do know that. And so they're mainly used for exploration. Next is navigation, which is probably the most important naval tech because it lasts so long. Up until frigates last until, I would say, they do last till battleships, which is, I think that's 2 full eras ahead. That's electronics, which is about as far away as you can get. That's almost 2 eras ahead. It is, but it's almost 2 eras in between those two. But frigates are, they can also enter deep ocean like Caravels and unlike Galeas. I think they have 4. They have 5 moves, so that's actually more than a Caravel. They just have less sight. But you need iron to build them, so you can't get, I've done this plenty of times, you can't get navigation without bronze working, which I actually skip bronze working a lot of times if I don't have any jungle. But you need that for navigation because you need iron. So, I mean, you could build privateers, which basically they're their own little class. Where actually they are their own little class because they upgrade into destroyers, which are also upgraded through ironclad. So they're kind of absorbed by the tree of units. And basically their specialty is they have the prize ships promotion, where basically if they defeat an enemy unit, there's a chance that I could capture them. And it also, you get bonus gold from attacking coastal cities because it starts with Coastal Raider 1, which it actually, the unit itself doesn't have ability, it's just that promotion. So I mean, if you get that promotion on an R unit, I'm not even sure it's available to R units actually, but it might be, given enough promotions. But yeah, so they're actually pretty good. The next upgrade is Ironclads, which they actually have quite a lot more strength than Privateers. But you generally, if you're using Privateers, you generally use them to, you don't attack head on, you generally use them just to kill enemy ships and to take cities. That's it. I mean, if you use them for just combat, then Ironclads are obviously a lot better. In Privateers, you can actually, this is kind of like a little tip, but you can actually go negative iron if you capture a frigate and you are using all your iron for frigates, and that would decrease the strength of all your units. I don't think I've mentioned this, but if you have resource deficiency, or you have less than you are, or you have less resources than your army is currently using, then the units weaken. I think it's by like actually a pretty hefty amount, like 50%, but it might be different depending on which resource, like iron, horses, or oil, maybe even aluminum, but yeah. And so the next unit, Ironclads, they use coal. They actually have 1 less movement than Privateers. Wait, do Privateers have 5? Yeah, they do. So they have 2 less movement, and they have 1 less movement than the Caravels, but it obviously makes up for the strength. 45 is quite a lot. Yeah, it even says in the description it pays for its strength by being slower. And it's not really slower than just Ocean Towers, just in general it is slower. Let's see. The next unit, actually there's 3 classes. There's a submarine class that I didn't mention. But that's only 2 units. Submarines, basically, they have actually a lot of range strength, even more so on frigates. They have a lot more strength as well, but not as much as an increase. But I mean, submarines are a bit unique, as in they have the same moves and same bombardment range, but they are invisible to units except destroyers, missile cruisers, and our submarines. So I mean, you can go up against, if you're out teching someone, you can go up against their army of frigates with subs, but the penalty is that they can't attack cities, which is you can't build an army out of entirely submarines or a navy and then take a city. That's impossible. That's kind of the downside. Or else it'd be probably a bit overpowered. Even though there's less range strength and strength, it would basically mean that your enemy would need an army of destroyers or other submarines or missile cruisers to counter you. But another cool feature is that they can actually move through ice. So like, if I look at my map, there's probably an ice block somewhere at the bottom of the map. Yeah, I can move under these tiles and get around here. So like if I had Troyes, I could build a submarine there and then get it out here or into here. Same with India's new capital, Vijayanagara. If I build a submarine there, I could get out. Luckily I spawned on the other side, but that's unimportant. So nuclear submarines are the next one. I'll talk about those once I get to it. But electronics carriers, they're actually their own unique class. Basically they have strength, which is base strength, but not a lot, and they can attack. And it carries 2 aircrafts, which can either be atomic bombs or planes, or like nuclear missiles as well. But and then you can get up to 3 or 4 through promotions, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you can't just send a carrier with like an atomic bomb to nuke someone. You need generally like a fleet to protect it, or like an escort fleet. If it's not your normal one, just a couple units should do. But I'm not sure they can stack with other units. I think that they're on their own tile. They take up their own space. Battleships, these are the first ones that require oil, kind of like the first planes require oil and how the first armor unit requires oil. But no infantry unit requires oil or ranged. Luckily, they take no resources. But these, they're the first boat that has 3 ranged. And I think this also has indirect fire, but maybe not. I don't know. They have the same movements, points, and they have a lot more strength and range strength than battleships, or not battleships, than frigates. And basically, this is the next unit after frigates, which there's probably about a good, I would say, 75 to 100 turns in between frigates and battleships. Maybe less depending on how much science you're earning, but on average it should be about that much. And you can't have an army of only battleships, because then you would get destroyed by submarines. You also need destroyers, which are combustion. And basically their main purpose is they're upgraded through ironclads. They don't have a lot more strength, only 10 actually. They have a lot more moves though, 6. That's double movement points. But basically they're used for melee attacks on cities, and they're used to hunt submarines. And basically I think privateers upgrade into destroyers. So you could have destroyers with the prize ships promotion, that's assuming your privateers survive, or survive past steam power at least. Yeah. But basically you need these in combination with battleships. You need like a half to half, not like some of the land battles you see where it's only artillery and like 1 melee unit. You need equal parts both. Next unit would be, actually there's only 2 units left, which is the missile cruiser and the nuclear submarine. The nuclear submarine is a lot stronger than the regular submarine, and it also has 3 range strength. It has 6 moves as well, which that's not double, but it's like +1 or +2, and it can carry 2 nuclear missiles. So basically, if you have nuclear missiles, you can use the nuclear submarine rather than a carrier. Same with missile cruiser. Both of these can carry nuclear missiles, but only nuclear missiles. The missile cruiser can carry 3 though, and it has 7 moves. That's the most in the out of like any unit in the game. And if you have England's special ability and the Great Lighthouse, that could be like 10 or more, which that's kind of insane. But they have 3 range again. I'm not sure whether it's indirect, but it's still 3 range. It has a lot more strength and range strength. But these can hunt down, these can target submarines as well, just like the nuclear submarine. But these this is also for both standard and nuclear submarines. It's not just submarines that, like, so units like the destroyer and the missile cruiser, they can target submarines and nuclear submarines. It would be unwise to attack a nuclear submarine with the destroyer, but you can. And these only hold missiles. I think I've said this, but if you're gonna carry an atomic bomb or airplanes, then you would need a carrier. They should make like an upgraded carrier for stealth bombers and jet fighters, because these are kind of like a bit outclassed by they outclass a carrier by quite a lot. It's kind of like in Civ 6, what you could originally do is get a siege tower, and then wait until tanks, so you can put it on tanks and then bypass city defense, which that was pretty OP, but it's kind of like that in this game. You're using an outdated carrier to hold the latest plane units. But yeah, that's it for all the units. But there's a bit more. City defense, I've talked about this. You can build buildings to increase it. And you can also station units in cities that'll increase the defense. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but proportionally to the strength of the unit, it'll increase. I just don't know by how much. So if you have a giant death robot, theoretically that should give it the largest increase out of any other unit. But I don't know. So you can get walls. I have all the buildings. I've actually minimized it, but it's walls, then castle, then arsenal. That's actually at the very top. I don't know why I'm scrolling down. And then military base. Those are the 4 buildings you can get to increase defense. No other building increases defense. The red fort does, and that's a defensive wonder, but that's a wonder and not a building. So, and then these can be built in any city, so it's generally good to build them everywhere. I think I haven't built in most of my cities, or at least my main cities. I should have. Yeah, I do have them built in my main cities, mainly because with autocracy you can get a policy that produces happiness from those, but or at least from castles and beyond. And with Neuschwanstein you can also get that as well. And then that's it for defense, really. There's not a lot to talk about there. There are some unique buildings, like the Walls of Babylon are unique. That's actually, I think that's the only one, but that also just provides a bonus to range strength as well of the city bombardment. But the next would be the promotion buildings, which would be, if you scroll down here, that would be barracks, armories, and military base, or military academies. And I've said this before, but barracks provide 1 promotion. Armories provide 2, and then military academy provides half of the next. So if you get a military academy and the Brandenburg Gate and Total War, that would be 3 total promotions. So it's more worth it to just, if you're at a war, it's more worth just to get the armory and then build units rather than spend the extra time on the military academy only to have the same exact amount of promotions per unit. But if you do get the Oxford, or not Oxford, I just scrolled on it and that's why I said it, but if you do get the Brandenburg Gate or Total War, then it would be worth it. Let's see. There's different promotions, whether a unit is for each class. So like submarines, they get their own promotions. Ranged boats, they get their own promotions. Melee boats, they get their own. Ranged land units, they get their own. Melee land units get their own. Armor units get their own. Mounted units get their own. Anti-armor, anti-mounted get their own. Planes get their own. I might have to make a complete new video on promotions. I probably will. But basically, you start out with 2 promotions generally per unit. And you generally want to go up 1. You don't want to like spread it evenly, because if you do, then you're only making it take longer to get to the late game the late promotions, which the 4th tier promotions are generally the best. So like if you're going for range units, you might want to go straight for logistics, which for boats, you'd go up 3 times and then get logistics, or if you're going for like standard range, it would be up 3. For artillery, it would be up 3. For planes, I would recommend you get like, I would say, or even for artillery or ranged units for land, I would suggest you get March first, which for planes it would be air repair, but basically air repair and March, what they do is for each action you take, the unit heals, so you don't need to fortify and heal, you can shoot and it would heal you. I'm not sure by how much, I haven't really tested it, or I haven't really looked, mostly because I think I got some units with that this game, but once you get that, then it's best to go for logistics or +1 range. Those are the good ones. I mean, you could get more of the lower tier, but they're not really comparable. And then for melee units, this isn't including anti-tank and anti-mounted or tank. Those are their own. But you generally want to get cover, so you would get 1 promotion on either one, and then cover 1 and 2. Those are generally the best, because you're generally going to use those to take cities. With mounted in armor or anti-mounted anti-armor, you don't need those because you can attack from more than 3 tiles away, or more than 2. But those, I don't even think you can get cover. Generally on those you would get medic instead, so you would use them as kind of support and just kind of keep them huddled around your units, like moving around generally. So you'd get 1 on of either promotion, and then medic 1 and medic 2. And then from there, it's just, you don't really need logistics, or it wouldn't even be +1 range. It's actually blitz for melee units, but there is no +1 range for melee units. There's other promotions like Woodsman and Amphibious, but those aren't really worth it. You would just probably get medic, go for blitz or March. I don't even think March is available for melee units. Yeah, I don't think it is. I think that's only for ranged. But So, and then for planes, ideally you would go straight for air repair. So that would be bombard. I think siege doesn't count for planes. Well, this is for bombers only. Fighters, there its own story. You usually just get interception 1, 2, 3, and then if you need to get +1 range or the thing that benefits air sweep. You usually don't use air sweep. You usually just use it for interceptions, or you could have 2 use 1 for air sweep and 1 for interceptions. But I mean, if they have multiple fighters, then you would need multiple counter fighters to air sweep to make sure that's safe to attack unit. At that point, it'd just be better to use like artillery or some sort. But yeah, for bombers, you get bombardment 1, bombardment 2, and then air repair, and then you can go straight for logistics or yeah, that's really, or plus range. Those are the only R2 that are generally worth it. Siege might be worth it if you plan on attacking cities, but it's generally, you usually save that for the artillery. You usually use the bombers to target units. Units that aren't protected by anti-air, of course. For fighters, I've already said it, you usually go for interception, that's generally it. I mean, you can go for plus range, which would help with your interception by giving it more interception range, but you generally want to get the more powerful interception first, unless your cities are spread out, kind of like my capital and Hippo Regius. That's pretty far away, unlike Utique. Gades is really far away. That might be more range than it can handle, but yeah. The next promotions for anti-armor or anti-mounted, or the anti-mounted promotions, they actually have the same. Anti-armor, on the other hand, they start with, I think it's formation, which are good against, it literally gives it a bonus against armor. I'm not sure what the promotion for anti-mounted units are, but they get a promotion for that as well. And generally for those, since anti-armor, which is literally anti-tank guns and helicopter gunships, these actually have their own promotion sets. Since anti-tanks, since they have 2 movement, it's treated more like an infantry, and since helicopter gunships are 6, it's treated more like an armor unit. They get their own. So helicopter gunships, you would take promotions for armor, and Anti-tank, you would take promotions for infantry. So anti-tank, you would grab cover in cover 2, while helicopter gunships, you would just go for medic 2. I'm not sure, like I said before, I'm not sure any of them get march, since that's only for ranged, I'm pretty sure. But that's pretty much it. And then I've kind of basically covered all of armor units now, where you go for medic 2. Same for mounted units. Those I'm not actually sure. Like horsemen, you can't really get. I mean medic 2, because you don't have the promotions for that. But I think starting with knights, you can get medic 1, and then maybe with like cavalry, you can get up to mech 2. Those would be good. And then lancers, I think, are actually treated kind of like the mounted units, so they can get medic 2 rather than cover 2, which would be for pikemen, since that's treated more like an infantry. But that's, and then I suppose like XCOM squads and paratroopers would be kind of merged in with infantry. You just get cover 2, or in this game I use the siege, or the Blitz method works as well. But generally cover 2 is best if you're going for just standard domination with like a fully diverse and versatile army rather than just one unit, and using attrition and outproducing them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for all the units. For nuclear submarines, or I'm not sure if this is for nuclear, but for standard submarines, you usually go for Wolfpack, which is just plus 25% for attack in both land and water units. Just go Wolfpack to Wolfpack 3, and then maybe logistics. I'm pretty sure that's available. I haven't really gotten to that point. I don't really use submarines. I more so just go for battleship destroyers. But yeah, if I get one, I'll probably eventually get to that point, maybe in the next series. And for range units, I've already talked about that. You go straight for march, and then logistics or range. But the last unit I don't think I've talked about was I haven't talked really about the other naval units. So for like triremes, and like this goes for all melee naval ships, you generally want to just go for the latest one is actually destroyers. They should probably make like, well, I mean, obviously they don't mess with this game anymore, but they should have made like one more late game melee ship, because destroyers are kind of outclassed by nuclear submarines and missile cruisers. They kind of just fight their own value. Destroyers kind of are irrelevant by that point. But for melee, you would go for I forgot the boarding party. That's it. Boarding party, which is just 10% strength against melee ships. You can't really get defense against ranged, but it's just 10% combat strength in battles. So I think it actually does cover ranged, but it might be only for melee battles. It might not be for defense against ranged. And that goes literally up until destroyers. You just get boarding party. For melee ships, you get there's 2. You can get bonus bombardment against land units and bonus bombardment against ships. Usually you go for ships. There's no real reason to go for land, because land units generally can't shoot back. But land units, I'm not sure I've mentioned this, but accuracy actually covers water terrain. So it says open terrain, and it covers water terrain. So that's kind of generally the way to go. If I was like defending Carthage, I would put like rocket artillery here with like accuracy, and then they would get the bonus against the water. But you want to go for bombardment against naval units generally. I don't think I've ever gone for bombardment against land, mainly because I don't usually fight land units. And then I think you can get logistics. I haven't really gotten to that point yet, but I can actually check if I buy a unit, UT, because all of mine, they get 3 promotions. So let's buy. Let's buy. What's the modern battleship? Yeah, targeting 1. And then sentry and mobility, generally not worth it. Supply, that's generally not worth it. I would just go straight for targeting all the way. And then if you go for the melee ship, that would be, do I not have missile cruisers? I don't know. Yeah, that's just boarding party. and it has the same promotions. It's just go straight for boarding party or targeting. That's only worth it. And then for aircraft carriers, you can only pick either between uh, targeting or just the I think it's boarding party actually. No, that's for melee. It's either between boarding party or it's between +1 space for your carrier. So it would be, if I click on it, armor plating. Or no, it's armor plating or flight deck. These two are just the same. Armor plating would be, actually it's only for defending because I forgot you can't attack. So it actually gets a little bit of a buff when compared to boarding party, but flight deck, just go for flight deck. You can get 2. You might be able to get a 3rd. I kind of messed up that promotion order, but armor plating, it's not really worth it because it's already so bad in combat that it doesn't really matter. But just go for flight deck. You can carry tons of aircraft and bombs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I've talked about all the promotions, the defensive buildings, the strategies regarding naval and land combat, and pretty much what all the different types of units and their uses are for. So yeah, like I said, no video tomorrow or the day after, maybe one Sunday. It might be, I actually might have a video Saturday, but it probably won't be. I'll need to take a little break, but Sunday there definitely will be a video. And then that I actually might start the regular series, or I might talk about the city center and buildings along with the early game, because I kind of did a bad job on that. I mainly only talked about founding a city and what to keep in mind when you're picking a location, but yeah, this series could go on for like another 5-6 episodes or parts, depending on how many more topics I have to cover about the game. Yeah, so I guess that's it for today. Sunday it is then.